Welcome to Enigmatica 2 Expert, Extended Edition. The topic today is going to be on Plethora. It's an add-on for the CC Tweaked Computercraft mod. I'll preface this by saying, if you are allergic to Computercraft or inexperienced and possibly bad Lua programming, turn back now. This route is plagued with danger. I guess before I get too into this manipulator block from Plethora and its modules, I should show what this script that I'm working on, what it does. Because it is pretty cool, I think. So I'll change directory into this guy. I'm practicing learning GitHub. That's why that shows up there. But if I just run my main little program here that I'm working on, it's going to do a few things that I want to talk about. Maybe I'll save those for later. So right now, when I load it up, it notices, hey, there's a crate here on the right, and on the left there's a manipulator. So that's cool. And it's just kind of waiting. So one of these little sensors here is the chat recorder that can intercept chat events. And then this module is the introspection module, and it lets you interact with the player's inventory. So let's say I'm out in the end. I find myself in the end, and I don't want to fight the dragon, which has happened to me many, many times. And I want to jump in the void, but I don't want to lose my stuff, right? Or have to go back and get it. That's where the dump all comes in. And what I've done here is my backpack that I'm wearing from, let me just get it off here. To take it off, you got to hit this button. So it's called the Traveler's Backpack. This, unfortunately, cannot interact with the backpack the way it gets placed on my character, because it doesn't actually exist in an item slot, whether it's baubles or your armor. If I hold shift and right click, or if I just right click. Thought it was... Oh, you got to place it, hit shift right click. Okay. What was I saying? Oh yeah, it's asking me, did you remove your backpack? Basically, it's trying to remind me, hey, this backpack won't get pulled, so get it off. And same with whatever this little eye is. It's like an extra inventory you get from eating a cake. We can't pull from there, so just, not a good place to keep items if you plan on jumping into the void. So I get a little random code that's generated just to verify that I want to do this, and I can hit boom, and it's going to say, hey, the code's right, and it's going to dump my entire inventory. And if we look here, it actually pulled my armor off, plus the bauble that I was wearing, which is pretty neat, I think. So let's just slap everything back to where it was. Eventually, I'm going to make a program that hopefully takes a snapshot of my inventory and then places it back in the spots that it was. But that's maybe in the far, far future. We'll see. I guess the other thing that I should mention, this little introspection module is kind of interesting. If you right click it, it's actually like a portable ender chest. So I could throw, books in there, right? And I slap this guy in, and then I say, hey, dump all. And then we can type in 763 to verify, and it dumps everything. And the books, those books that I just slapped in here, are gone. So it's pulling my inventory, my armor, my ender chest, which, you know what, I'm just realizing doesn't make sense. I got so caught up in doing everything that I could, I didn't stop to think that pulling the ender chest doesn't make sense. I'll have to disable that. You might be asking yourself, why are you going to the end to jump into the void and possibly lose all your items? Well, the reason is for the introspection module. I was trying to make it, and it was easy enough for me to make this diamantine crystal with the changed recipe. Notice it requires 4 ender chests to get this portable ender chest, which is kind of cool. But to make this guy was actually difficult. I could not find this essence. And when you read something, I forget where it is, I guess here, it says, hey, the end, and I'm thinking, oh, all those obsidian pillars. Great, I need to go to the end, get this stuff, and somehow get it back. And that spawned the idea for this program I just showed. However, the Discord for the mod pack, somebody awesomely suggested just go to the Twilight Forest. There's obsidian pillars there. It's rare, but some of it spawns on it, and I was able to get it that way. But I still felt like I needed to make this program that I dreamt up. So maybe taking a quick look at Plethora here. They got some decent examples down here, but I'm going to be honest, about a year ago, I had tried to do something with the overlay glasses. Actually, if I pull up, open JEI here, the neural interface and the neural connector, I do want to play with these later, but unfortunately I have to make another computer, and that's kind of expensive in this pack. I made one of these, I realized it doesn't do color, so then I had to make one of these, and if you didn't know, where is it here? Oh, that's a monitor. This guy. All this nonsense. It's not actually that expensive, but it's just a bunch of microcrafting I'd rather not do, especially since I don't have a good inventory system right now. But regardless, I needed to make the immersive press, which isn't difficult, but I'm just not set up for it. I'm wasting too much time trying to learn how to do Lua programming. But about a year ago, I tried to use the overlay glasses to detect a solar eclipse. Basically, if I was underground mining, I wouldn't know there's a solar eclipse happening. And that evening in Astral Sorcery, you get a constellation that only appears after a solar eclipse and then every 36 days or something like that. And I'm going to struggle to pronounce it, but the constellation here is Horologium, if that makes sense. And you see here they got a code snippet, and I had kind of borrowed a chunk of this the whole time snippet they show here. I actually converted it to my solar eclipse detector. And it's a clunky program. It works, but it's not great. I've learned a lot, I feel, since then. And then just in general, I've been playing around with some of the different sensors. The entity sensor, the kinetic one's kind of cool. You can make a bit of a flight. I did that in the Twilight. It's a clunky program too, but kind of a cool little proof of concept. The main one I like though is the chat recorder. It can intercept things that I type, and then the introspection module. And if you give it a read here, they got a little bit of an example, and this is the cool bit here. Right-clicking it will open the player's ender chest. And there's a lot of good information in this, and there's not much to read, but I definitely feel like the examples are lacking. I'm eventually getting there, but I'm making lots of mistakes and jumping through lots of hurdles. So going back to this program, the other cool thing that I wanted to show off was if I just decide, hey, I'm getting rid of this inventory, this thing actually does a refresh. It knows when modules get added or subtracted. And even this guy, if we were to break this and slap it down over, I guess there's only two modules here, it now knows, hey, the manipulator's at the back. So if I type in a dump all, hopefully this works, otherwise it'll be embarrassing. We can type 129 to verify it. There it is. So that's cool. Oh yeah, this is like a debug message just to tell me what got moved. It's kind of ugly. I think if I break this and replace it, I basically do a clear and refresh. That's cool. The other thing is dump all. Let's say we type that, we're like, oh man, I don't want to do this. Well, you can make a mistake, right? You could type in the wrong number. That's going to say, hey, just type cancel. And then it forgets about it. It's not interested in that anymore, so you could just type it again. Probably got to type the full word. Don't want to do it, so I could just type cancel. So if I hold Control T, it'll stop the program that's always running, and I could do an edit. Plethora. And here's the code, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't program in here. They really could have made the terminal like a little bit bigger. It's really awkward, right? So let's just close that. All right, so I've just booted up my IDE here, my Visual Studio. This is something I only recently got working. I would say it's extremely awesome. It is so much better. I've got it pointed to my server directory where my world is, so it's actually looking at the computer that I'm on. So any code in here is a live change when I tab back into my game. So my idea here is the program's supposed to be kind of dynamic, that anybody could download it and plop down a couple things and it would just auto detect and work. And one of those things is the dump container. Maybe everybody's not going to use the crate, so you would just type in, Minecraft chest or whatever your inventory is, and then it looks for that and says, okay, that's going to be your dump chest. I got a basic little library here. It's not that important. It's basically just for formatting text for my troubleshooting. Just me kind of practicing that. Got some variables here. This is a little function called generate code, which is just making a 3-digit code for me to type in to verify. All of these little functions here are kind of interesting to me. They're new to me. If I scroll down to the very, very bottom of this code, we got this really cool thing, this parallel dot wait for any. And basically what it's doing is it's looking at this function and running Plethora inventory manager, and then it'll have to wait, or yield, I guess is the correct term. And then it jumps to peripheral add or peripheral remove. It's an awkward word to pronounce. And then chat listen. And what it does is it kind of just bounces between these. That is my understanding. And anytime the program yields, it jumps to the next one. And so what that means is the first one here, Plethora Inventory Manager, is this little snippet here, this little function. And the first thing this function does is it calls the initialization function, which is up there. But that's not one of the main 4 functions that are always running. It's kind of something that's not called very often. It's only really called on startup and then anytime something gets added or removed. So then after it calls it once, it loops indefinitely. While true, just every 2 seconds sleep, or sleep for 2 seconds rather. I'm not actually sure if that's seconds now. Let's just assume it is. Once sleep happens, it actually yields. So as soon as this happens, it yields and it jumps to the next thing. And that is peripheral add, which is this little guy right here. And what happens here is, while true, so it runs indefinitely, it looks for an OS pull event. And what's really interesting about this os.pull event, I have it filtered to look for peripherals getting added to my computer. It waits. So it waits for that to happen. And if you don't have a way, I've probably already botched this. This is like sleep. It yields. So it's going to wait for this event to happen. But it's not going to wait indefinitely because your program would just stop, right? You don't want it to just stop. So as soon as this happens, it's going to yield and it's going to jump to the next thing, which is remove. And then it'll do the same thing. It'll indefinitely run, but when it gets to this stage, it checks, did something detach? And if not, it yields and jumps to the next thing. And there's a really interesting write up here that is worth reading because I'm sure what I said is kind of botched, but that's what you get. So chat listener, next one. While true, so the same structure. You want these functions to kind of run indefinitely, but if they're running indefinitely, they do have to yield to allow other things to run. It's kind of my understanding anyway. So here we have another OS pull event that's filtering on chat messages. And chat messages is actually something that's added by Plethora. These guys here are part of the basic CC tweaked or computer craft event filter. These are something added with Plethora. So what happens here is, I guess before I talk about this code, I should probably talk about the initialization code, because we've looked at when something gets added or removed, but we haven't looked at the initialization. Basically what happens here is I should get my mouse cursor out of the way. It gets the name of everything attached to it, and then in a table, I stick the side that it's on, left, right, top, bottom kind of thing. And we get the type, which is basically, is it a manipulator or is it that labeled crate or a Minecraft chest, whatever it is. We print it and then we kind of loop through it and we say, if that type is a manipulator from Plethora, then set manipulator to that so we can use this elsewhere in the program. I need to talk to this manipulator and be able to reference it at later times to be able to talk to these modules. So that's why that manip variable is interesting or valuable. And then the next thing here, this v-type dump inventory name, that is, of course, set up at the very top where somebody could change it to like Minecraft chest. It's just saying this is the spot where you're going to do your dump to. That's cool. That's how you initialize. So anytime a peripheral gets added or removed, it will rerun this initialization thing. So if somebody was to remove the labeled crate or the introspection modules, it would error out. And I want to try to handle all the errors so it doesn't just crash. It kind of just says, hey, you're missing a module. So that's cool. We go back down to chat listener. We type a message and we check that the manipulator peripheral is added or it's valid, it's there. And then we also do a check if the chat module is not installed. And if it's not installed, just say, hey, it looks like you're trying to use it. And I don't actually think now that I'm saying this will ever run because it will never detect a chat message. Oh yeah, I typed it right here actually. This is a day later. This will actually never run because it will never get to here because it'll never see this if the Plethora chat module is not installed. Kind of tripping over my words here. If we go down below, this is where we can say, hey, if the player is Toast on Rye, my username, and I've typed dump all, that's kind of cool too. It's making sure the person typing the message, if I was on a multiplayer server, is actually me. And what's kind of cool is that's my player name, but it also lets me check my UUID, which is a little more of a secure way to reference a player name. But for right now, that doesn't matter to me. If it detects that I'm saying dump all, it's going to say, hey, just make sure your backpack's removed and everything else is removed and verify it. And then it runs this generate code function, which whips up here and then just gets a random number between those two values, 3-digit, and then returns it. So then it displays in the text and then I can type it in later. And then it does a check here just to say, okay, the code's correct. And then to the inventory dump function, it actually passes the keyword all. So if the message is correct, jump to the inventory dump function. And then the last check is if we've typed in cancel, then just clear everything and wait for another command. I still have some extra debug messages because I was running into a lot of little hurdles here and there, so some of the code's not really worth talking about. I guess the last little interesting section here is actually transferring the items. And in terms of moving items, it's actually a pretty small snippet of code, and it's basically duplicated. I might try to make a nicer looking function later, but we'll see. So basically, if the string that's passed to this function is all, which it was, it'll say dumping inventory all. Possibly I might do a dump just your hotbar or a dump just, certain slots. Let's say I'm mining or exploring caves or dungeons and I'm getting lots of loot. You might just want to send back a partial inventory. So the player inventory is equal to this manip, which is basically looking at that introspection sensor, that introspection module. And then we get a list of what the player's carrying, and then we loop through it. So for each slot, get the item name. This is just the debug thing. The interesting part is the push items. It's looking at the player's inventory. It's going to push the items to the dump inventory that I had previously set up. And then it loops through each slot. Same thing with the player equipped. And if we take a quick look back at the references here, where is it? Moving items. I still find sorting through methods documents kind of awkward, but get equipped. So we got get inventory, get equipped, get ender, and get baubles is missing, but it does tell me, where is it here? It does tell me get baubles is right here. So like I said, the documentation works, but I feel like it's not polished. And I don't expect it to be at this point because it's quite old, 1.12. It's probably end of life. So that's cool. Get equipment, get ender, which is your ender chest, which I really should remove because this doesn't make sense. And then get baubles. But there's no error handling and error checking. I need to play with that later. This is just still kind of a prototype proof of concept. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to share because I don't know. I always look for videos when I'm trying to learn new things. There's not a whole lot of Plethora on YouTube. And I'm a huge fan of this. I'm still trying to, work out. I don't want to call it, it's parallel. I don't know if it's a thread. I don't know my programming language, but it's really cool how you're kind of hopping around between functions. And it's not just a script that runs from top and bottom. It's kind of more dynamic and you can do more, for lack of a better way of saying that. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for watching.